Thank you. Welcome to ISOO's training seminar. My name, as most of you know by now, is Peggy Ushman, and I'd like to welcome you. Our agenda for today, Mark Bradley, the director of ISOO, is going to do an introduction, and then we will get into what we're really here for. The Defense Security Service has kindly agreed to brief us on what they have available for training, which is quite extensive, and there's no way we can ever hope to match that, but we will try. Meredith Wagner is out sick today, so Carolina will step in and speak briefly about a survey that we're hoping to put out. We will allow you a break so that we can finish off the coffee out there in the lobby area. And then we'll have Bob Skwirot talk about on-site review findings. And Robert Tringali is going to talk about what the required elements for your derivative classification training should be. We'll have a brief presentation on the types of training available for the CUI program. And then we will have time for questions and answers. Well, questions, I can't guarantee the answers. Okay, Mark Bradley is, as I said, the director of the Information Security Oversight Office. He was appointed and approved on November 4th, 2016, so we're still breaking him in. Before coming to ISOO, Mr. Bradley served in the Department of Justice, where he worked on a wide variety of counterintelligence and counterterrorism matters. He has served as a CIA intelligence officer and as Senator Daniel Moynihan's legislative director. He's also a published author. His book, A Very Principled Boy, The Life of Duncan Lee, Red Spy, Cold Warrior, won the 2015 George Pendleton Prize. So we are very, very glad to have him here in our office and here to speak with you today.
Thank you very much for that, Peggy. I appreciate that. I may be new in months, but I sure don't feel that way in years or even doing this job. It's been an interesting transition from the DOJ to National Archives. Anyway, what you're about to see is first of a series of reforms we are kicking off in ISOO. Some of our reforms are budget-driven. We, as you know, are a small agency, and we expect to have not a sizable budget cut, but certainly maybe 5 to 10% when we finally do get a final budget. So we've had to kind of retrench a bit and think about how we could use our resources best. So this is, I think, one of our most important initiatives, the training. When I first became director of ISOO, one of the things that I did was to begin to read all our reports. And as you know, ISOO puts out a lot of reports. Probably the most important is the annual report to the president on classification and declassification. And one of the things that struck me about that report was the number of recurring mistakes and errors that we were finding. And by that, I don't mean to call anybody out at all. I think that the point of this is to try to correct these mistakes. I mean, not to report on somebody's mistakes, but actually to fix those mistakes. Because as you know, the report goes to the president. So we decided that probably the best thing to do was for ISOO to be more active in training ourselves. And that is because we, I think above all else, should set the standard for what the right way to do things in this arena is. And by that I mean we are the experts in classification and declassification. So what we thought we would do was to set kind of a standard that we would like to train to. And so what we're trying to do here is eliminate these mistakes. Now fortunately, most of the mistakes that we found are relatively minor. I mean, you all do a very good job. And one of the things that I often worry about is whether or not we have a regime that's too complicated. And if that's so, I'd like to hear that as we work through our training. What we did is, in order to set up this unit, I looked inside ISOO and tried to pick some of our most experienced and most knowledgeable people. And Peggy, as many of you know, is a leader, I think, in declassification, classification in the federal government. And she has now become quite a screen presence. We are using YouTube, we're using webinars, we're also using live training. As we go through this training, as we roll it out, I'd like to hear anything else you all would like, because I think above all else, ISOO's mission is to serve, and that is to serve you all. That's what we do. And so if we can help you in any way possible, I'd like to know that, because if we can come to your agency, if we can sit down with your own experts, if we can do a particular training on a particular subject, no matter how arcane it is, we'd like to be able to do that. So please, you must reach out to us to let us know what you need, because quite frankly, if an error is introduced into a document's bloodstream right off the bat, that error will likely carry through. It'll go through, particularly if it's a derivative document or used to derivatively classify something, it'll go all the way through to its declassification. So that mistake could live in that document for a very long time. And so it's important that we try to stop that from happening at the outset, right? So again, one of the things that I worry about is that, is this regime that we've created too complicated? And if you look at the steps in it, one of the things you don't want to do is, as an old Intel guy, is that you don't want to take longer to mark a document than it takes to write it. That doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, in fact, that retards the operation, the mission. I mean, after all, the mission is to get the intelligence out to the proper hands, right? I mean, to get it where it needs to go. It's not to sit here and have a 25-line marking scheme. So again, if you think this is too complicated, then let's hear that, because we are on the cusp, I hope, of soon being able to do some reforms to the Executive Order 13526. That's not a given. I know John Fitzpatrick up at the NSC would like to move forward on trying to, if not completely overhaul the order, which I think would be a mistake, but obviously there are some things in there that we can tweak and can tune up and fix. So it's important that we think about marking in that context too. I mean, is there a way that we can maybe reach this at a higher level than just in a training seminar? If we can go back and maybe look at some of the documents that actually undergird this entire scheme. So it's going to be very important for us to hear that from you, what you'd like to have fixed or corrected as we move towards this reform initiative, if indeed it does take place. Again, not a given, but it's a hope. And it looks like it may actually be more than a hope, but just stay tuned for that. As you go through today's training, please ask any questions you have. I've got probably the best people I've got here giving this talk today, or at least some of my best. And so please take advantage of what they have to offer. I think that you'll find a very open group here. I mean, receptive to anything you all have to say. I mean, in fact, I think above all else, I think we think of you as our peer group. And although we may set some of the standards, I think that none of these standards should be set without your input or your informing us how to do things better. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to the real experts so they can begin to school you. And please, I mean, again, thank you for coming. Enjoy our hospitality, such as it is, and let's try to get these errors out of these reports. I mean, nothing would make me happier than to sit down next year and write a report and say, Mr. President, we've taken these errors down to almost, nil, or if not nil, pretty close to it, where it's just, we've got them down as low as we can possibly go. So with that, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We're going to talk about the collaborative effort that we would like to encourage between agencies and ISOO, and briefly discuss current training practices. But the most important thing of all, we have our very own email address, isootraining@nara.gov. So please, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, just send it to that email and we will respond as quickly as we can. So training is one of the most important things that we can do, and the importance of training in classification management cannot be overemphasized, particularly in the area of proper markings of classified documents. As you will hear repeated many times throughout the session today, without proper marking, information cannot be properly protected and it cannot be appropriately shared. As ISOO develops their training program, we want to be able to sit down and work with agencies and encourage interaction between us and better understand what your training needs are. The purpose of this new direction is to encourage consistency and accuracy in all training programs. We have, as Mark said, a number of experts on our staff. Bill Carpenter is our primary expert on declassification, so any questions that you have in that area, we can definitely handle with his expertise. He also leads the ISCAP, the Interagency Security Classification Appeals Panel, so his level of knowledge is immense. We've got so many people on our staff who work with classification management, declassification management, MDRs, declassification, everything. So any questions you have, we would love to hear them, and we can certainly address them. Now, one thing is we will not tell you how to develop and conduct your training, but we do hope that you will allow us to review your training and assist in areas you think you may need it. We are also available to come out to agencies and deliver briefings in a face-to-face type manner. We want you to tell us where you feel there's a gap in training, and we want you to feel free to come to us with any questions or feedback. As Mark said, we really are here to help you, and we want to work with you to make all of our programs stronger. So in short, what can we do to improve training and classification management across the executive branch? Right now, the CUI training is not part of this particular process because their program has not yet been fully implemented, but we do have a slide later on, as I mentioned briefly, that does talk about the training that the CUI office has already put online for everybody. Currently, from what I've seen, every agency either creates their own training products or they use someone else's training. The Defense Security Service, the CDSE, is most commonly used, and I refer a lot of people to them myself, because they have an excellent selection of training courses. However, a few comments that I've received are that while their training is really good, it is DoD-centric and may not meet their particular needs. We have been working hard in this office to begin developing training tools that can be used by all. As Mark said, it is a baseline training. We have a number of training aids available on our webpage, and we are in the process of updating some of those. We have a marking book out there. Again, we're going to be working with that and trying to simplify it a little bit. And we have a derivative classification training course on YouTube. Evan Corin and I star in that. Right now, we have over 400 views on YouTube. I'm looking for 1,000 because we really need to beat the number by the CUI folks on their YouTube videos. So I encourage you, please, to go look at it. And we, of course, have all of this available on our webpage, www.archives.gov/ISOO/training. We also are in the process of developing a briefing on the mandatory declassification review process that we will have available on our webpage, we think within a few weeks. And we are also developing some updated frequently asked questions. If there is anything that you guys would like to see us provide on our webpage, just let us know and we will do our best to accommodate that. I will now turn this over to Mr. Scott of the Defense Security Services Center for Development of Security Excellence, and he will brief you on the CDSE program. Thank you.
Good morning. Again, Dwayne Scott from CDSE. I'm a portion of the Defense Security Service. What I'm going to do is give you a little breakdown of our diverse command brief. We parsed it out to the information security section and training because that's what you're more than willing to learn about, I'm sure, understand. Our mission, as we said, is all about DOD, DOD, DOD. We have a vast mission statement, and more or less to make it a little bit more condensed, it's talking about delivery, being a premier provider, security education, training, professionalization, and certification of our security professionals. What that means is that we deal with the National Industrial Security Program, which is all about making sure that those contractors or personnel that build things, do things for the government, handle that information properly. That's our main focus on the DoD side. Within our CDSE, we go through 3 parts: training, education, and of course, again, certification. Training talks about awareness to all. Education talks about making those individuals smart enough, making them a better security professional. And then certification itself is more or less saying, okay, you've been certified to do the job that you've done. As I go into maybe slide 3, I'll talk a little bit more about the certification program and how we go about making sure individuals are properly trained. How do we do this training? Well, we first talk about our audience, and then those content areas, and then our method of delivery. Our audience, again, primarily DoD, but we do cross numerous agencies, whether it be security professionals, security assistants, FSOs, adjudicators, whatever your title might be, is still a security professional, almost all the 080s, 086s, and those type titles. And then in our content areas. The reason we call them content areas is because primarily, most people talk about the security disciplines, the top 4, physical, info, personnel, and then, of course, industrial. But we also have content areas where we deal with the SAP, counterintelligence, insider threat, cybersecurity, operation security. All of those have a security part or portion to that. So we changed the name a little bit to content areas. That way, when we talk about something that doesn't fall in a discipline or is part of a particular discipline, we can parse it out. Our delivery methods, we have multiple. We used to go by the term distance learning. We now do e-learning, classroom, instructor-led, and then we have our catch-all, which is virtual instructor-led. Our virtual instructor-led is a combination of both, where you're able to be online, you have some insight with the instructor, and you get that information. Why do we change? Well, we all probably know that our learning force goes from those older or seasoned, new or young individuals that require training, and they like to have that training in different methods. Not everyone wants to sit in front of a classroom. Some want to sit in front of a computer. Some want it in 7 minutes or less. Some want to be up there for 2 to 3 hours taking a 7 to 8 day course. So we had to make sure we were not languishing. We were pertinent to all of our audiences out there. So we came up with all of these different type of methods, whether it be security shorts, videos, job aids, toolkits, which handle a lot of different resources, not only that we've created, but from other agencies where you can go in and find some additional information that we might have developed ourselves. What are our drivers for training? Our drivers for training always come off of what we call our Defense Security Training Council, and then we have to have something that says, okay, this training is required, whether it be the DoD Security Skills Standards, we call them the DS3, whether it be world events, or of course, policy. That's where our main focus is the policy. If I'm going too fast, slow me down, Rojan. Oh, you're good. How do we make sure we're current, accurate, and relevant? Our training products, we have a lot of other agencies that look at us to make sure we're current, accurate, and relevant, that we can provide this type of training. We have the COE, which is the Council of Occupation Education. That certifies us as a learning institution to say, okay, you all are doing a good job. You have the correct instructional system designs for your courses. The course and the delivery is out there the way it should be. We have accreditation for ACE. What ACE says is that, hey, you have some good courses out there. We're going to allow those courses to be given credits by different colleges. Now, we have no way of verifying that those colleges are actually giving them credits, but ACE says that, hey, you may take a course and you may be able to get higher level degree credits or lower level degrees by virtue of taking some of our courses, instructor-led or e-learning. And then we have our SPEED certification. Our SPEED certification is our new benchmark that allows the security professionals to say, hey, I'm certified. In the past, most of us have been in those security disciplines, and we just knew what we were doing. So I've heard the analogy to like a doctor. You go into a doctor's office, you see a certificate on the wall. He went to college and he does all this type of stuff, and you know he's certified. Or a mechanic, you go in, you see that ACE certification technician, you know. So we kind of did that for security professions with speed. So you could say that that person may be on their first level, the fundamentals. He's certified to know those particular areas that are in that certification. And then we go up to the 4th level, and I won't go through all of them, or Rojan won't be able to get to the important part about our products itself. Then we have CompTIA. The CompTIA is more or less for the information security personnel that deal with those systems, those certifications that are required out there. And then you get CEU, continuous education units. And then the last one, ISOO. So basically that talks about our relevance, how we became who we are, and how we prove, or at least try to prove, that we're able to provide you some valuable information. Within DoD, our CDSE, I have approximately 5 individuals, 3 that are represented here, one Rojan, our instructor cadre, that is very well versed on information security. As Rojan goes through and talks about some things, he's going to more or less probably give you the information for those guys, probably tell you if you need to request some additional training that you will go through them, which will ultimately get to me to determine if we could do that for you all. Guess I'll hand this over to Rojan, and he's going to talk about the actual products for you all.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Good morning. Good morning. All right. As Mr. Scott said, I'm Rojan Soriano. I'm the Information Security Curriculum Manager at the CDSE. What that means is it's a fancy title. It says I'm basically responsible overall for the design, development, and delivery of information security training products at the CDSE. And what are those products? Well, let me give you a quick breakdown here. Our information security catalog here at CDSE is broken up into, we have the largest portion is our e-learning courses or web-based training. We have 12 of those in different areas of information security, which I'll show you in just a little bit. We have one curriculum of a group of courses based upon one different specific topic area within information security. We also have one instructor-led training course, our information security and management course, which probably some of you have attended, or maybe you know someone has attended that course. It is about a 4 or 5 day instructor-led course up in Linthicum, Maryland, where security professionals have an opportunity to learn and practice some of the principles of information security as it applies to the DoD information security program. It is a fairly robust course, fairly a vigorous course. And so if you have anyone that is interested in taking that, I would recommend that that person that takes that course have at least a working knowledge of the information security program. We also have 2 toolkits here within our catalog, and the 2 specific information security toolkits are basically a one-stop shop for new security professionals or security managers or security officers who don't want to have to go all over the internet or go over our catalog and look for different products and or items that might help either develop their information security program or help bolster their existing program. We have one dedicated to information security, sort of in the traditional information security sense, meaning protection of classified information. And we also have a CUI or CUI toolkit as well that is starting to grow a little bit, and you'll probably see some of the ISOO's, some of ISOO's products linked in that toolkit. Like I said, I'll show you that here in just a little bit. We also have 11 security shorts, and what those are like what we call like short courses. They're usually about maybe 7 to 10 minutes in length, and they focus on a specific information security topic. For example, maybe one on NATO, for example, or one about perhaps marking the electronic environment. So those are little chunked areas where someone may need information on a given topic, but don't need to go through a full-blown course. We also have 10 job aids, and those are basically desktop references, things, hard copy, things you can have, paper copies that you can have at your desk for easy use. Again, they're usually centered around one particular topic, such as derivative classification or marking, for example. We've got a couple job aids that you can use as a desktop reference. And they also have one video, kind of a how-to video that we have on our YouTube channel as well. And then our catalog is kind of rounded up or kind of finishes off with 12 different webinars. And these webinars, again, they're basically on a given topic, and typically it's a live session where one of our instructors will speak on a particular subject, or we may have a guest come on and talk about something else, such as maybe some hot topic, something that's very important. For example, last year we hosted one on insider threat. We also held one on unauthorized disclosure as well. So again, these webinars are either live or they can actually be pre-recorded. And then once the webinars are done, then anybody can access them through our website. So that kind of rounds out the information security catalog within CDSE. And with that, let me kind of give you a brief tour of our website here. And again, like as Mr. Scott said, we do have a multitude of disciplines or content areas that CDSE has products on. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and just focus on our information security piece right here. So right here is our main page, cdse.edu, if you're taking notes there. And this is our main page right here, and it's broken up by our different areas that Mr. Scott talked about: education, training, certification, and then resources as well. Ooh, didn't see that. Okay, resources as well. So I'm going to go ahead and under training, which is where information security is, and we're going to go into the particular content area here. All right, so again, these are the different content areas that Mr. Scott described, and so we're going to go ahead and go into information security here. And right here, let me kind of scroll down here. So again, this is our instructor-led course, the Information Security Management course. As you can see, it is certified or by ACE, the American Council of Education. So people taking that course can earn college credit for that upon successful completion. Let me get into the course itself here, or at least the link to it. Let me. So again, this is a description of the course itself. Describes the different outcomes or objectives for the course, the target audience, and again the length again. Again, like I said, target audience just with all our courses is DoD centric. DoD security managers, security officers, security professionals. However, we do have our share of folks from outside of DoD that do take this course and our other courses as well. A lot of times their own agencies may not have anything organic and where they're at. So as Ms. Ushman mentioned, that we do get referred a lot by by ISOO and other agencies to us for their information security training. And again, and even though it's DoD centric, there are a lot of things. There are obviously a lot of commonalities between agencies in terms of how they protect classified information. So those folks that do come out from different agencies to our courses are able to at least get something out of that course that they can take back to their organization to either develop and or improve their security program. Again, like I say, it's a 5-day course on a series of different information security topics. The course itself, the instructor-led course, there are actually a number of prerequisites that have to be completed before students can be allowed entry into that instructor-led course. So there's a series of, I want to say about 13 or so e-learning courses from our catalog that they will have to successfully complete before they're actually allowed to register and actually attend the course. So what it is, it's kind of broken up into 2 phases. So the prerequisite piece is what we call phase 1. And which introduces them to some of the fundamentals of information security through our e-learning courses. Phase 2 technically is the actual instructor-led course, a 5-day course where they actually come to Linthicum and actually practice what they learned from the courses that they took in phase 1, the prerequisite courses. So a lot of times folks that do come in to the course, we always ask them before coming to the course, make sure you understand or review what you learned in the prerequisite courses in phase 1, because when we go into phase 2, the instructor-led course, the expectation is that we're not going to reteach everybody everything. We're not going to teach you everything. We're not going to reteach about marking, derivative, classification. That piece was already covered in the information in the phase 1 part of the course, or the prerequisite phase of it. So, but again, like I said, it's a fairly robust course. I will say we have had our share of people not successfully passing the course. So on average, you average about maybe 1 or 2 failures per iteration. So like I said, it's not a cakewalk, and that's why I said earlier, folks, there's folks that do take this course, we want to make sure that they have at least a working knowledge of the information security program. And we've had folks try to take this course at maybe 6 months into their jobs, which unfortunately is not a recipe for success. So again, just want to kind of reiterate that to everybody. But again, that is our one instructor-led course under information security. And here with e-learning, which forms the bulk of our training, again, it's broken down. We have courses in just about every information security topic that you can think of. And again, a lot of these are based on DoD policies, which of course is derived from national policies. So let me show you one of our more, take you into one of our more popular ones. For example, derivative classification. Right here. Again, it's a fairly long course, but then it does kind of go into detail the principles of derivative classification from a DoD perspective. But again, there's a lot of folks that from outside of DoD that take these courses, and there are things that they can take back from their organizations as well. Our courses are through these courses. You register to get to these courses. You register through our learning management system, which is known as STEP, the Security Training, Education, and Professionalization Portal. That way, usually students that take it through that, that's usually because they're using it to complete a prerequisite for another course, or for example, they're in a career development program where they need proof that they've attended that course through certificates and/or course transcripts. There's also another way to take some of this training without the need to register for a user account or to go through any of that red tape, which I'll show you in just a little bit. But I just want to let you know that a lot of students do take these courses through our learning management system. So anyhow, so this is the derivative classification course. There's a description of it right there. One unique thing too about our courses is that the end of course exams are actually separate from the course themselves. So once you complete the course, then doesn't necessarily mean you've actually completed it. There's actually an exam. Typically, there's an exam piece that you will have to register for separately to get full credit for the course itself. And those exams are usually about 20 to 30 questions in length. And I guess they're kind of randomized in nature. So if you don't pass the first time, you're not going to get the same set of questions again when you take it the second time. So just for a little bit of academic integrity there. Anyhow, so again, derivative classification, we have a refresher course as well. We have one's on information security emergency planning, marking, another very popular one, as well as original classification. We have on security classification guidance, on helping to develop security classification guides, for example. We have one on policies, procedures, and programs, which kind of talks about basically security just so from a policy standpoint, more of an introductory level type course. Transmission, transportation of classified information. And a couple of really popular ones or really hot ones lately, you've probably heard the unauthorized disclosure of classified information for DoD and industry. Some of you may or may not have known the National Security Council had put out a decree last month urging or highly recommend or asking the different agencies for their people to conduct UD training or unauthorized disclosure training within their agencies. Some of the courses or some of the products that they recommended to help accomplish that training included the unauthorized disclosure course that we have right here. And then if any of you are with DoD, you probably saw the memo from Secretary Mattis late last month directing all DoD agencies and components and services to have their folks take this particular course as well to help meet UD training requirements within the DoD. So again, this course originally was developed, it started development about 4 or 5 years ago as a result of the WikiLeaks situation that occurred, which is unfortunately compounded by the whole Bradley Manning situation as well. But that course still is relevant, even though this has been out for about 3 years. Its relevancy continues on, and I suspect that that will continue for the foreseeable future. Let me scroll down here real quickly. Again, these are some of our job aids that we have. Again, on different topics, different security topics. We also have several case studies regarding unauthorized disclosure. These are simple one-page. Let me pull one up here for you. These are one-page synopses or summaries of different UD situations that have happened in the past. It's a great training tool for your security programs. Again, it's easy, it's painless, doesn't require a lot of rocket science to do or go through, but it has a lot of good information that you and your folks can glean from. So that's just a sample of one of our case studies right there. If we had a video, we do have one training video on packaging classified documents, which is available on our, I believe, on our YouTube channel as well. We also have a number of security shorts, which actually I'm going to show one here to you in just a little bit. But again, these are about 7 to 10 minutes in length. Again, they cover one particular security topic in general. And these shorts do have resources that you can download as well. Most of them do have a student guide that you can use as a desktop reference, or you can take that student guide, run with it, and develop your own training from there. So those student guides are a helpful tool in more ways than one. Some of them have also have different job aids that you can use as a quick reference, either within your program or to share with your workforce as well. And yeah, so again, like I said, there's a lot of good stuff here that you can use for your program as well. Then here's our webinars right here. Again, these are all basic podcasts to a certain degree on different security topics that we've covered in the past. And again, like I said, you can take those. There's a downloadable. You can download, I believe, a transcript for most of these. Let me go into one here, for example. We did a couple of years ago on security classification guides. Let's see, it's taking a while here to load. But as you can see, there's different resources that you can download from those webinars as well. There's a Q&A, there's a transcript, there's actual presentation slides you can download that you can use in any way, shape, or form within your security program. None of this stuff is copyrighted, so we're not going to come and sue you or anything like that for copyright infringement. We don't make money off of these things, for better or for worse. But again, like I said, a lot of good information there for you. And then here's our toolkits. Again, this is our CUI, we have our information security toolkit here. Let me pull that up. So again, this is kind of like what I was talking about. It's a one-stop resource. So if you want to know things about classification and marking, for example, it'll take you to our courses regarding classification and derivative classification. It'll take you to some of our shorts, some of our courses or webinars and job aids. So if you don't want to hunt around the entire DSS or CDSE catalog, you can just go straight here to the toolkit and be able to find that information right away. So if you want to know about, let me see here. If you're new, for example, doesn't want to take me there. There we go. So it has all our courses and such, different policies that may be relevant for you. For your folks. Again, a lot of this is DoD-centric, but there are a few national-level policies that we've inserted in there as well. Okay, so let me see here. Oh, where am I? Okay, so again, I was backing out to the toolkit here. Again, there's different areas, education and training. So we have briefings, sample briefings. You can use different resources. We have security posters, for example. These are really good for marketing or awareness campaigns that you can download as well. Post those around your break rooms, hallways, elevators, restrooms, whatnot. So very, again, very timely and relevant information that you can use And some of those are actually award-winning. I think some of the ones that we put out this year actually won a couple of awards for them. See briefings and additional resources. We also do have toolkits and other security disciplines or content areas as well. So it's not just limited to information security. So if you have colleagues or you yourself are involved in other security areas, there are toolkits that you can refer to as well. And then let's see here. So that's sort of the. I'm not going to go through every single piece of the information security toolkit, but that kind of gives you an idea of kind of like what is available there. Our other toolkit that we have is the CUI toolkit. Again, this is sort of this one is sort of growing at the moment. There's not a whole lot at the moment on there, but what you will see is several links to ISOO, particularly the national policies, for example. And then training as well, if I can find a link for training. So there are things there for CUI awareness as well. Yeah, there you go. So again, there's the different FAQs or frequently asked questions items there. That again, this is going to be as the CUI program is implemented throughout the DoD in particular. There'll be more information. That'll be on the CUI toolkit as well. Okay, so let me kind of go back here to information security. So earlier I mentioned that most students take our courses through our STEP, our learning management system. But there are also times too when some of our courses, some agencies or components use our courses to accomplish initial and/or annual refresher training that's required within their respective areas. So there is another way to also take some of these courses, and I'll show you right here. If you go if you're under training, if you go to the delivery method, there's a place called the Security Awareness Hub, or SAH. And what this is, it's another site that we have where and these are some of our most common courses. Some of our most common courses are housed here as well. And again, these are courses that most agencies or components will use to accomplish their training. These courses, the ones that are here, do not need registration into our STEP or into our learning management system. They can just click and go, complete the training. Most of these courses also have an end-of-course exam or quiz at the end, and you'd have to obviously pass it, and in order to get a certificate of training. It's quick, it's painless. Again, like I said, don't have to go through all the red tape of registering for incident user account. The one thing I would ask, or just to remember, is if folks do take training through this site, through a Security Awareness Hub site, CDSE, because it's not on the learning management system, will not be able to keep records of who completed a particular course or who completed a particular course. We've gotten inquiries a number of times from folks that say, "Oh, I took the derivative classification course on your Security Awareness Hub site, but I can't find my certificate, or I wasn't able to print a certificate, or I forgot to print a certificate. Can you give me a new certificate, or can you show me a copy showing that some proof that said that I completed the course?" Unfortunately, again, like I said, because it's not on a learning management system, we can't do that. So what I recommend is, if you're taking a course through this, either take a screenshot showing you've completed the course. Make sure you maybe print out a hard copy of the certificate and then keep an electronic one as well as a PDF. It will allow you to do both as well, just to avoid any sort of complications later. So again, this doesn't include all our courses, but these are most of our most popular courses and/or ones that different agencies, at least within DoD, have identified as required for their initial or refresher training. Okay, so let me go back to our site here, back to training. I mentioned that we have a number of shorts, security shorts on a given topic, and one thing I wanted to show you is kind of like this is just an example of one of these, how these shorts looks like. And before I do that, let's let you know too, a lot of our products, particularly e-learning courses, as well as our shorts, those products are developed either internally by our own staff of instructional systems designers, course developers, programmers, multimedia specialists, in conjunction, of course, with our instructors and course managers and other subject matter experts. There are times, too, when we do develop some of these products externally with a vendor, when we contract some of the work out with them. So it's sort of an either-or case. Some of the stuff we do ourselves, some of the stuff we farm out to a vendor. So, but this one, so one of the things we developed this year, the last couple of years, is the shorts regarding the standard form 700, the 701, and the 702. How many of you have worked with those forms in the past? All right, good. So a good number of you. How many of you, I guess, within your own agencies, how many of you all are in lockstep on how to properly complete that? Okay, less of you than originally. So, so what happened was a few years ago, when we were in the within the information security management course, we had discussions on these three forms, and particularly the SF700. One of the things that came out of it was nobody knew exactly how to complete it. At least there was no agreement on how to complete it. So at least within DoD. So what we did is what was supposed to be like a 5 to 10 minute discussion on the standard form 700 turned into a 30-minute discussion / debate on it. So after seeing a number of these iterations, I sat down with my instructors and said, look, we need to do something about this. Obviously, we need to get down more to a fundamental level. So what we did then is we did a couple of things. First of all, we beefed up the SF700 presentation within the course. We added a graded practical exercise where students are expected to complete a standard form of 700 on using a given scenario. But also we also wanted to touch the folks that have not either attended the course or have no intention to attend the course. Say maybe they're a safe custodian or whatnot, or that was just added on as an additional duty, or a container custodian. They're not necessarily a security specialist, but maybe a security manager or whatnot, but they have been given this duty regarding protecting or having oversight their particular container. So I said, okay, well, we need to develop a product for them too. And so what came out of it was the standard form 700 short, the standard form 701 short, and the standard 702 short, or standard form 702 short as well. So let me go ahead and give you just kind of show this to you here real quickly here on the and so this is the first one of the series that we did for this in this particular topic area. Do we have audio on this, right? Okay. Welcome to the SF700 short, completing the SF700 form. This short is unclassified, and all classification markings displayed are for training purposes only. The voice sound familiar? Please note the resources link at the top of the screen contains additional reference materials. All right. Today is Private Bond's first day on the job. He has been tasked by his leadership to change the combination on a GSA-approved security container in the Research and Development section of the National Defense Center. Secret information is stored in the container. He has changed the combination. However, he does not know how to complete the SF700. Private Bond has requested the assistance of the Security Office for instructions on how to complete the SF700.
Good morning, Ms. Johnson. I have a request for assistance.
Good morning, Private. How may I help you?
I changed the combination on the security container as requested. However, help on completing the SF700.
Sure, I can help you with that. Let me pull up the DODM 5200.01, Volume 3, and we can walk through the process together. Let's turn to Enclosure 3.
Per Enclosure 3, security container information, you must maintain a record for each container, vault, or secure room door used for storing classified information. The SF700 shall be used for this purpose. You must complete a new form each time the security container combination is changed.
I noticed the SF700 has multi-parts. Once I complete part 1, what do I do with it?
Part 1 of the SF700 is unclassified, but because it contains personally identifiable information, or PII, it must be protected by placing it in an opaque envelope conspicuously marked Security Container Information and stored in the control drawer of the security container. Once you complete Part 2, it must be marked at the highest level of classification authorized for storage in the security container, in this case, secret.
Thanks, Ms. Johnson. It sounds like Part 2 is now a classified document. I remembered after taking CDSE's derivative classification course that a classification authority block is required. Do I need to fill it out? If so, what information is required and where do I place it?
That's actually a great question, Private Bond. The classification authority block shall state derived from 32 CFR 2001.80 D3 with declassification upon change of combination. You may have noticed that there is no reference to the placement of the classification authority block. However, the policy at the National Defense Center is to place it at the bottom of Part 2. If you move to another command, they may have a different policy, for example, on the back of Part 2. There is one question you haven't asked.
Private Bond looks at Part 2 and notices there is a Part 2A.
Ms. Johnson, I just noticed there is a Part 2A. What is my next step?
Part 2A must also be completed and marked at the same classification level as Part 2 and inserted into Part 2.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for providing the instructions on completion of the SF700.
Private Bond turns to leave Miss Johnson's office.
Excuse me, Private Bond, but there is one more detail we need to discuss.
Ms. Johnson, what did I forget?
Do you know where to store the completed Part 2?
I was going to place it in the same container as Part 1.
Private Bond, what would happen if you were locked out of the container and you don't remember the combination?
I didn't think about that. What if I stored it in a different container at the same classification level or higher?
Good job, Private Bond. That is exactly what you should do.
Private Bond has done an outstanding job of requesting assistance when he did not know how to complete the SF700. Are you up to the challenge? So that's the short. That's the SF700 short. And then there's a knowledge check here at the end at the end of the short as well. But that's kind of representative of some of the stuff that we have in terms of shorts. I will say they're not all of them are as entertaining as this. A lot of it is dry, and as you know, security itself is dry, so that's why we kind of had the little cartoon theme to that particular short, just to add a little spice to it, so to speak. So, anyhow, so I would invite you to when you have a chance to go to our website again, www.cdse.edu. Again, this is just the information security piece to it. As you can see, there's a lot of material, a lot of content there. I didn't go through every single product. I'll leave that up to you to do that at your own leisure. But we also do have, just to let you know, too, again, if you have colleagues that are saying in personnel security, physical security, cyber security, or whatnot, that we do have materials and training materials for those content areas as well. So it's not just all info security, but there are also other training topics as well. So, okay, so let me kind of get back to the presentation here. There we go. So just for additional resources, there's some email addresses that you can contact us at if you have any questions specific to information security. If you have any questions regarding security or CDSE in general, any of our other products that you may have questions about, there's an email address as well. Apologize for the length of the email address. That wasn't my choosing or doing. But I think, again, like I said, but we will, if you do email us, we'll get to you within a reasonable amount of time. is our website. Again, www.cdse.edu. And then also, again, the Security Awareness Hub, what I mentioned to you earlier regarding some of our training courses that are typically used for initial and/or annual refresher training, can be accessed directly as well through that website. Okay. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, for the annual security awareness training that we have to provide for our clearance holders, are you aware of any non-DoD departments and agencies that are using your training to meet that annual requirement?
Not off the top of my head, I do not have any specific agencies that I know of, but I do know, again, like what Ms. Ushman said earlier, they do get a lot of referrals to us, and we do get a lot of questions from different agencies about our products in general.
Okay, but we're welcome to steal and use parts of it in our training, right?
Yep, again, like I said, we do get requests from time to time about, hey, can we take your course and put it in our learning management system and such. Typically, we usually don't entertain, we don't usually comply with those requests. But what we could do is, as an alternative, like I said, the student guides, all these courses have student guides in them that are downloadable. And what I've done in the past is, hey, you can use those student guides as sort of your springing board for developing your own training, because the student guides themselves are essentially a transcript of the entire course. So you can take and you can cut and paste wherever you kind of want from what we do, and if you want to add your agency's own flavor to it, then that's obviously well within your purview.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Is CDSE or DSS involved with the Interagency Security Committee, specifically the security competencies that they put out last year? I know the Secretary of Defense put something out about a year and a half, 2 years ago, saying that the ISOO would be adopted by the Defense Department.
I'm not directly involved with that, but our certification professionalization branch may or may not have information on that. I can definitely take that question to them and try to get you an answer for that. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
Is there an annual training schedule for the information security management instructor-led course?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Is there an annual training schedule for the information security
Yes. Yeah, let me take you to our website here. Actually, what I can do is I can show you the schedules for all our instructor-led training in addition to that. So let me see here. Actually, I only have the one for this particular course. Do you know, we do have a site, don't we, Dwayne, for? So anyhow, so for the information security management course, it's right here. So we do have 2 iterations coming up in FY18. One in Stuttgart, Germany in March, and then in Linthicum in June of next year. Yeah, so. Some other places that some of our other courses that we're headed to next year, Stuttgart may just seem kind of inconsequential, but no, I'm just kidding. Hawaii, I think, is a location, I think. So, but we're not taking that particular course there, unfortunately. But no, if you go, so that's for that particular course. We do have a site, I believe, that has our schedule. Okay, let me see here. Were there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good morning. I know you probably don't have time to really address this, but you did such a good job at navigating on the website here. But what is the difference, or can you clarify when you're studying for SPED, what link do you click on? I know all of these courses correlate, but for the SPED certification, where are you actually clicking to complete those courses?
Okay, you're talking about for the SPEED program?
Yes.
Okay, so you're talking about certification then. So under certification, there's a link there for the overview right there. Is that what you're looking for?
Okay, got it.
Yes.
You have to have 2 different passwords and usernames.
Okay, yeah, so STEP, and that, well, yeah, those are separate systems. For STEP, it's usually just for our training courses. For the professionalization, there is a different, yes, you're correct, there is a different site and or login that you have to use to either request to take the exam and or to get information regarding your current credentials. I don't have the information with me on that, but yes, there are two different sites for that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Question. The
Yes.
information security class. I took the instructor lab before, but do you all have a refresher course, or will you have to go through the whole process again if you want to be refreshed?
Yeah, unfortunately, we do not have a refresher. We do update the course from time to time, obviously through either world events and or policy changes. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, depending on what where you sit, what the requirement is there something if there's something within your organization that says you need to take information security refresher training every so often, I mean, I guess you could register for the course again, or if it's easier for you to go through actually take any specific e-learning courses, if you need maybe refreshers on certain topics, or to view any of our security shorts. But no, we do not have an actual instructor-led refresher course. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I'll take one more and we'll move on. Yes, sir.
Going back to the same example, there was that curriculum heading.
Yes.
If you hit those links, is that a collection of courses or learning activities, or what do you see there?
So are you talking within information security?
Yes.
Okay, so we do have one curriculum within information security, and it has to do specifically with original classification. So what it is, that is that it is a suite, like you said, it is a suite of courses that an individual would take for a certain security topic or content area, which, again, once they're done taking all those specific courses, then it says, yes, they've completed that curriculum itself. So the curriculum itself is not a new product specific. It's actually a collection of our existing products that is basically just been banded together.
Is there a formal certificate for completing those?
There is a certificate for the curriculum, and then there's also a certificate for each individual course. Okay. All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you. DSS really has come a long way in their training availability, and it really is a super good website. All right, we are running a little ahead of schedule, which will make you guys happy because that means a slightly longer break. Our next section, it's just a brief section on a training survey. As I said, Meredith Wagner is out sick today, which means this is the last time we let her go on a cruise to the Bahamas. But Carolina Klink has really generously offered to step in and take her place. Carolina is one of our program analysts. She has worked with me in classification management. She now works with the operations staff, and she does a lot of our webpage stuff. Very talented individual, and she will talk to you briefly about the survey. Carolina.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So ISOO developed a training survey so that we could better understand all your agency needs and what you guys want from us and what you expect from us or what your goals are in the future. As you can see, these are some of the survey questions. And we have all your emails outside, but if any of you want us to email you the survey might go out today if we can get it together. If not, it'll go out tomorrow morning, and it'll go out to whoever gives us their emails or whoever registered. So like I said, this is just a sample of the survey, and it should be very short to complete. It shouldn't take more than a few minutes, and that's pretty much it. So if you have any questions, feel free to take the survey and let us know what you expect from ISOO and what your goals are for the future. Thank you.
All right, the next topic under discussion I know I originally stated that it was problems that were identified during on-site reviews, but it's not really just problems. It's findings, things that have been found while doing on-site reviews, and Bob Skwirot is going to cover that topic. He is one of our senior program analysts. He works in operations, and he leads the on-site review process. And don't throw anything at me, but he also is in charge of the self-inspection reporting requirement. Okay, so Mr. Skwirot, if you would like to.
Well, good morning. Well, you made it back right on time. Thank you. So Peggy said that I'm going to present on our findings from on-site reviews, and Peggy gave me a lot of latitude. So you know, she didn't restrict me to anything. And those of you, and I've seen a few of you that I know very well. Those of you who have who've had our on-site reviews, you know that we cover many things. We cover program management, classification management, security education training, self-inspection, security violations, safeguarding, classified information systems, industrial security, and review classified documents. So I'm not going to talk about what we found in all those areas. I'd be here all day. But I think it would be good for me to talk about things that relate specifically to what you do with your training. So obviously talk about security education training, what we found in those areas. But I think also another area that would benefit you when you think about the things you need to cover in your training is what we found during the document reviews. Because that's an area where as our director, Mark Bradley, indicated, where there's ongoing findings in that area. So those two areas will be my focus: security education and training, and the review of classified documents. So for security education and training, I'll outline what we found over the past 3 years. And some of these are one-ups. Some of these things that we see at a number of different agencies. But again, talking about them may help you think about your programs and think if anything might apply to your program. So the first one is that the required training elements are not covered in the training. So the directive for the order, 32 CFR Part 2001, lays out the basic requirements for training in a number of different areas. That includes initial training, training for original classification authorities, training for persons who apply derivative classification marking, annual refresher training for all personnel, and termination briefings. And so those requirements are our basic requirements. My colleague, Robert Tringali, he's going to talk about what those requirements are for derivative classification. But one of the most frequent findings that we see in the training area is that one or several of those fundamental requirements for those areas are not covered. And that's an easy one for you to fix because the requirements are spelled out very clearly in the directive. And it's 32 CFR Part 2001.71. The next thing I want to talk about is those elements may be covered, but they're not covered sufficiently. So it's not just a little checkbox. Did I mention this? Did I mention that? You want to be able to present enough about it so that people understand the principles and really internalize them. Specifically with regard to OCA training and training for derivative classifiers. There are elements required, but also the directive says that OCAs must receive detailed training on proper classification and declassification with emphasis on avoidance of overclassification. So again, they need to be able to understand their responsibilities as an OCA and how to fulfill them. The same for derivative classifiers. They must receive training in the proper application of the derivative classification principles of the order. Again, and that's the challenge, really, is to make the training live for people and make it so that, that they're not just gaining awareness, but they're gaining knowledge of these principles and requirements and know things well enough to be able to do them appropriately. The next thing I want to talk about is the effectiveness of the training. So we sometimes we go to agencies and we look at the training and say, wow, this is pretty good. And then we go and do other parts of our process, and that includes the document reviews and interviews with classifiers. And we wonder if we're at the same agency, because the documents are dreadful, and the people don't understand the basic principles of classification. Like, they don't understand the difference between original and derivative classification. But the training was great. So there's a connection you got to make, and that's part of your process as you go through the years with your training. Is you kind of step back and say, does this look good? Is it working? And so I think that's the lesson I want to communicate from that finding that we sometimes see. We also see that maybe one of the required training is not provided. So an agency doesn't provide annual refresher training. Well, I mean, that's just a fundamental gap in the program, right? So that there's your opportunity every year to remind people, this is what you're supposed to know, this is what you're supposed to do, and this particular agency wasn't doing that. So you handicap yourself when you don't do these kind of things. Another thing, sometimes agencies will implement the multi-purpose training. So, they may decide, well, let's fulfill 2 or more of these requirements in one training. So with the annual refresher training for all personnel, they'll also give training for derivative classifiers, or they'll give training for derivative classifiers and original classifiers together. And on the surface, it makes sense, right? Let's not burden people with many different trainings. Let's do it all together. But sometimes it doesn't work out. So you may have a large group of personnel that have clearances but don't really classify information, and are not persons who apply derivative classification markings. That's the standard of the directive. And so the detailed derivative classifier training would be more than they need. But then you may have the other mindset. Well, we have all these people that don't need all this. Well, let's maybe take some of the details out. So, if you're going to do double duty or triple duty training, you need to make sure that it not only covers all the elements, but covers them sufficiently. Next thing I wanted to talk about, personnel have not taken the training. We've seen that as high as 99% at an agency for a particular type of training. And certainly that's a big problem. So you go out of the way to create the training and distribute it, but if you don't have a means to ensure that people take it, then you're not getting the effect that you're looking for. So there's a requirement of the order and the directive that original classifiers and derivative classifiers that don't take the required training have their authority to classify suspended. And we often find that suspension doesn't take place. And it's a stick. It's a stick that's required by the order and the directive, and I think it speaks to how important the high-level policy folks in the federal government thought that this training was. When EO 13526 was issued, they put this suspension requirement in there. So if people aren't taking the training, you need to have a means to ensure that they take it. Because I think we all have the same interest. We want our people to know how to do these things properly. And if they don't take the training, they're likely not to know that. Participation in the training is not effectively tracked. We used to see this more often than we do these days. So, now a lot of agencies are using learning management systems, but some are still not. And they sometimes have challenges in tracking who has taken the training and who hasn't. And obviously, it's very important to know who hasn't, so you set them on the right course. Similarly, a mechanism to make sure training is taken. Termination briefings, people when they leave an agency or no longer have access to classified information need to have a briefing to remind them of their responsibilities. And many agencies have this particular briefing as part of their out-processing checklist. And you're not going to be able to separate from the agency and maybe not even get your first paycheck if you don't do these things on the checklist. So if your termination briefing isn't on your checklist and people are walking out the door without getting it, you need to find a way to make that happen. And then there's the requirement, again, in the directive that the findings from your self-inspections be included in your refresher briefings. And that's really for you to get some bang for your buck out of your self-inspection program, right? So you find things and your people need to know what you found. But sometimes we find that agencies are not doing that. And I didn't put this on here, but there's also, I wanted to talk about a classification management issue that we sometimes see come up during our reviews, and that's the use of 25X exemptions. So I think most of you are aware that those are exemptions from automatic classification that need approval in order to be used. So they need approval from the Interagency Security Classification Appeals Panel, and typically that approval is for at the end of the process to exempt them from automatic declassification at 25 years. But there is a provision that allows agencies to apply it at the front end of the process if the ISCAP approves that. So the ISCAP would need to approve both the exemption and the use of it on the front end of the process. And we have found some agencies that were applying this exemption on the front end of the process without the authority to do that. So that's something, particularly when you're training your OCAs or when you're thinking about creating your classification guides, to keep in mind. And I want to finish this list on a positive note, because we find some agencies that have really strong enforcement mechanisms to get people to take their training, and I want to recognize that. So we came across one a couple years back where the training process was linked to the login to the system every day. So when you logged in to your network, you would get training reminders that pop up. And then you would get reminders at certain periods of time, training required within this number of days, this number of days. Well, if you get to day 0 and you haven't taken the training, your access is cut off automatically, except to allow you to take the training. So that's a stick. So some of you folks out there are thinking of innovative ways to do this, and I compliment you, and keep up the good work in that area. So now I want to turn to document reviews. So what did we find just in 2017 reviewing classified documents? Because I said this is an area where we typically find problems. Well, so 2017, we went to 10 agencies to do on-site reviews. There were 4 full reviews and 6 follow-up reviews. And we reviewed just over 1,000 documents. Well, 641 of them had errors. So percentages are easy here, right? So it's 64% of the documents had errors. That's high. But that's kind of what we see. And that's why our director started off the program saying, you know, we need to do something to fix this. And total of more than 1,100 errors. And so, you know, typically more than 1 error in the document, in any document that contained an error. So this is too high. Obviously, it's too high. In fact, you know, at individual agencies over recent years, we've seen error rates as high as 90% or more. But on the other end, we've seen them as low as 12%. So there is a way to make this better. But unfortunately, they often fall in this range of 60 to 70%. And you know, the markings aren't just some administrative requirement. They really do have a purpose. You know, they identify who classified the document, and that helps you either to ensure that person is doing the right thing, but also, you know, that the people, particularly original classification authorities, indeed have the authority to do this. They communicate the period of time that the information needs to be protected, and that's important. You know, the order doesn't allow us to protect these things forever, and if the declassification dates are not there, then the document is in this limbo through the whole process. You don't really know what to do with it, and when you get to the back end of the process, it makes it more difficult. It also, you know, if it's not properly marked, you really don't know what in it is classified and what isn't, and it makes it difficult for you to share the information effectively. So you know, this is important, and I think we could all agree that this is an unacceptably high level of errors. So I want to talk about the kind of things that we found, just, you know, so that's something for you to think about. Maybe you might want to address them in your training programs. Yes, sir.
In your definition of error, are you just talking about mechanics and syntax, or are you addressing over and under classification and things like that as well?
Yes, so over and under classification is included as well. Now, we recognize, though, when we come out and review these documents, we are not subject matter experts. So we're very cautious about when we cite over classification, but we do look at documents for that. And certainly, you, as the experts from your agencies in information security, who also have knowledge of the classification activity at your agencies, that's something that you should be looking at, absolutely. And so, would anyone want to guess what was the most commonly occurring marking discrepancy that we saw this year? No, not you, Peggy. Lack of portion marking is a great guess, because typically that is the number 1. But it wasn't this year. It was number 3 this year. Top and bottom, no, that was probably about number 7. Subject line. That would be portion marking the subject line you're talking about. Classification block. Yeah, so there were problems with the classification block this year. So let's start. The classified by line this year. So almost 23% of the documents had problems with the classified byline, either missing or incomplete, because as you know, classified byline must include the name and position or personal identifier of the classifier. So that was the most common one this year. You're all right that portion marking is usually the #1 problem. The second one, multiple sources not listed. So you may remember on the previous executive order, multiple sources you would cite derived from multiple sources, and then your list of sources could be kept with the file copy of the document. Under this current executive order, that list of sources must be on or attached to the document. And so about 23% of the documents did not have that list of sources. The next one, portion marking. 79 of these 208 were major, meaning they had either none or almost none of the required portion markings. But most of those were minor, meaning one or more portions were not marked, but most of them were. And typically, in this instance, it is the subject line that is missed. So another class block issue, declassification. And again, there are a variety of types of declassification errors. It could be that the block was missing. It could be use of an old marking like X1 or something like that, but problems with the declassification line. The next one was another classification block issue, the derived from line. So again, missing or incomplete. And then reason line. And typically when we encounter the reason line, it is in a case where someone inserts a reason line with the derivatively classified document. Again, the previous executive order allowed with derivative documents, the reason line could be included or not included. Obviously, it must be included with an original classification, but for derivative classification, it used to be optional. Under the current executive order, it is not permitted with derivative classification. And I think one of the reasons for that is in the past, we didn't have a classified byline, and now we do in both instances. So it might be confusing to see classified by and reason line in a derivative document. So again, the reason line is typically that it was included improperly in a derivative document. The next one is marking. So that's the overall markings. The overall markings typically that this about almost 5% were missing. So here's the overclassification. And again, a small percentage. And I think some of these actually were not overclassification in the sense of people making errors in classification, but these were system errors where the system was pulling in a classification marking to a subject line that was incorrect. And then the next one was the document not dated. And so this is another requirement that was new to EO 13526. It's not new anymore, but the date of the document must be included in all classified documents. And then the last one, the transmittal document without the caveat unclassified when separated from classified attachment. So these are what we found this year, and think about your program, think about your documents. You're all probably you've already done your self-inspections and you've done the document reviews that are part of those, and so you've probably seen some of these problems yourselves. And if you have, then kind of step back and say, well, what can I do to fix this? you know, and I think why we're here today is one of the important tools you have to fix these things. So, you know, look at what I found, and then go out and find it in your own, and you know, see if you need to make changes in your training to address these things. Please.
What is the delineation between the 79 and the 129 errors that you found with the portion marking?
So the question was the delineation between the 79 and 129.
Yeah, the major and the minor.
Right, so major means that there either are no portion markings or, you know, maybe just one or two, so almost absent of portion markings. Whereas minor portion marking means most of the portion markings there and just a few things are missed. Maybe a subject line is missed or maybe a chart or something is missed, but most of the markings are there. So now's the time for questions. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Do you have an estimation about maybe a correlation between the multiple source listing, obviously that's 231, and then the declassification being 132?
So you're.
Yeah, you say that there's, yes, let's say somebody has a document and they've got to pick between 3 different declassification dates because they're using multiple sources and they naturally don't pick the one that's the far away as they should. Is that why that 132? Is that 132, do you think, or?
I think it's a different one. So the question was, what is the correlation between the multiple sources not listed at 231 and the declassification at 132? And so if there's a correlation, it's that there are some instances there is no classification block. But typically multiple sources not listed means that there is a class block, and it lists the derived from line lists multiple sources, but there is no list of sources in the documents. Yes? I'm sorry, you have follow-up. Yes, sir.
All right, second line says multiple sources must be listed. Our FDO department says they cannot be listed for foreign release. Do you have any directive that says that agrees with the FDO department?
We do not. So the question was, your FDO, Foreign Disclosure Office says that multiple sources cannot be listed for foreign release. And so you're asking if we had any policy that is in line with that.
They take the sources out before they give it to us.
I think maybe we can have Peggy talk to this offline, or if you want to say something. So Mary, can you go to the microphone, or somebody pass the microphone to Mary?
Thank you.
So that we can get this on the recording. Thank you, Mary.
Mary Houlihan, we work closely with our partner engagement, which would be our FDOs, and many times they're saving the original or sourced version and making a version for release to the foreign partners. So that could be either a practice that they're doing as an FDO or a solution to the problem, or both. And when our NCTC folks make releasable versions for their partners, they're keeping the original highly classified version as well with all of the sourcing, and then stripping out the sourcing for partners.
So there is a policy that says for FDO purposes, for foreign release purposes, we do not include the sources.
That's an internal, that would be an internal policy. I don't think that ISOO has a policy to cover that, but in the intelligence community, we recommend that you keep an original copy.
We're not intelligence, we're DOD.
Understood, but that would be an internal policy, so you may have something to cover that. I can only speak to the processes that I know, but it's very likely that they have original copies and then copies certified for release to the partners.
So your comment was wouldn't, your question was, wouldn't that just be considered a form of redaction?
Depending on what process you're using, if you're creating the document for release from the get-go, then you wouldn't be redacting anything. You'd just be leaving that stuff out. You'd be writing for release. But if you have a document and you're looking to release it, and it's already a finished product, then you could redact the sources out of there. It's something that we see often as well.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Oh, I'm sorry, the lights, yes. Blinded by the light.
Do you do any coordination with DOE's Office of Classification, that other flavor of classified information that some of us care about? You know, the restricted data side of the house, their errors or their classification?
So we do not, because that is not under our purview.
We coordinate, but we do not interfere with specific RD or FRD.
Okay, so we have no idea.
Like, for example, when they expected us at GMD, now with RD, and that would be
Okay. We're just curious as if, like, for example, the RD side of the house, which is what I work with, we work with a lot, have the same kind of issues.
Mm-hmm. Right, so I'm sorry, I didn't repeat the question. I know my friend here from the AV staff wanted me to repeat the question. And the question was there any correlation with the RD side of the house? Yeah. Okay. And so we have another one, yes.
So, for the multiple sources, what is the value added in adding the listing of multiple sources? So I would think that it would be kind of like a distraction to the recipient, or the recipient might ask for that information that we're documenting as a multiple source.
I kind of think the opposite, that there are some users who would like to know this information so they can see the provenance of the information that the document is communicating. So I'm going to take one more question. I've already gone way over my time, and I apologize for that, but yes, sir.
Quickly, regarding declassification, is there any more detailed data that might get down to the variety, the frequency of specific types of errors, discrepancies?
So regarding the declassification error, is there any more specific data? We do have specific data from our individual reviews, but unfortunately I don't have it with me today. So you can reach out to us, and I can get additional information for you. If there are other questions, I apologize. Again, I also apologize to Robert for having gone over. But thank you, everybody, and I'll turn to Robert Tringali.
Thank you, Bob. This is known as the Bob and Robert Show. And so now I will introduce Robert Tringali, a program analyst on our operations staff. He is also the ISOO liaison for all of you DoD folks here. So if you do have any questions, comments, concerns, he's the one to talk to. So Robert.
Thank you for the introduction. I greatly appreciate it. I also appreciate you taking time from your very busy schedule to take part in this training. I hope the session will be productive for all of you. 7 years ago, when Executive Order 13526 was first signed, we hosted several question and answer sessions at the National Archives because there had been so many changes to the Executive Order, and we received a lot of positive feedback from both agency people as well as contractors. What we did is we divided the executive order into its individual components, such as original classification, derivative classification, safeguarding. And in this presentation, I'll be focused on the required elements of derivative classification training. I know that there are questions and concerns regarding this training. And as Bob had discussed, we've been going on these reviews for many years, and we look at the whole gamut of the program to include security education, safeguarding, security violations, and of course the document review. And so I've seen firsthand some of the problems that you've encountered with derivative classification. And I'd also like to point out that my presentation will closely parallel some of what Mr. Skwirot was talking about. Our presentations will kind of complement one another. But again, from my experience, usually the biggest problem has always been the derivative classification during these reviews. And I've noticed that sometimes I'd be looking at an inspection, if I had to grade it from an A to a B, I mean A to an F, I'd be looking at an A or B inspection, and by the time I got done with the document review, it would go from an A to a B or from a B to a C, and that's largely because of the confusion surrounding document review. But again, during the presentation, I'll be focused on the required elements as well as some of the individual experiences that I've had at agencies with their derivative classification training. And also, too, those of you who perform derivative classification training, I know that at times it must get very, very frustrating. 7 years after the executive order has been signed, there's still a lot of questions, and you still see the same mistakes being made again and again, but you will continue to make a difference. Okay, we'll begin with the basic. Derivative classification means the incorporation, paraphrase, and restating and generating a new form, information that is already classified, and marking the newly developed material consistent with the classification markings that are applied to the source material. So that could be a short version of that is you're taking classified information from one document and putting it into a newly created classified document, which is the essence of derivative classification. Now, the information could come from a source document, multiple source document, or a classification guide. That being said, derivative classifiers are responsible for maintaining the protection and integrity of classified information. Derivative classifiers must also have a firm understanding of marking techniques as well as the basic understanding of the principles of classification management. Let's talk about what derivative classification is not. It's not the duplication and reproduction of already existing classified information. It might not seem important, but we've noticed that in the past that some of our SF311s, the numbers were greatly inflated, and we think that's because some agencies were doing that, counting a copied document as a derivative classification decision, which of course it's not. Okay, when we go on our reviews, these are the elements that we expect to see included in the derivative classification training. If one of these elements are missing, we'll notify the security manager. But here they are, the proper application of the derivative classification principles of EO 13526. The emphasis on avoiding overclassification. We touched upon that earlier, and when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because when you overclassify material, you have to expend time and resources to protect that information at various levels. The classification levels, top secret, information and release of which will cause exceptionally grave damage to national security, secret information and release of which would cause serious damage to national security, and of course, confidential, the release of which would cause damage to national security. Very simple. On the duration of classification, you can classify information for up to 25 years. Anything going beyond 25 years, you would need an exemption that's been approved by the ISCAP. I was recently on a review in which I saw the classification date of 40 years, but it didn't have an exemption that was approved by the ISCAP. So, of course, the document was marked wrong. I'm only bringing that up as a reminder that if information is going to be held for longer than 25 years, it requires an exemption that's been approved by the ISCAP as well as the classification date that's been approved by the ISCAP. Identification and markings, there are those who would argue that this is the most important part of the training because quite often this is where there's the greatest amount of confusion. Here, talking about, as we alluded to earlier with those statistics on the classified byline, you have to be identified by name and position or a personal identifier. Also includes the classification authority block as well. Classification prohibitions and limitations, we'll discuss the 4 instances of those as well as the 4 instances of sanctions in which an employee will be subject to a sanction. Classification challenges, I've noticed quite often in derivative classification programs, this is the one element that's often missing. As Bob had stated, when we go on our reviews, we conduct interviews with the staff, and quite often the employees are not aware that they have an obligation to challenge the classification of information that they think is improperly classified. We'll also discuss security classification guides, another item that's often overlooked, as well as information sharing. Okay, we'll begin with the basic derivative classification principles. Among the most basic difference between original classification authority and a derivative classifier is that an OCA has to be appointed in writing by the president, the vice president, or a senior agency official. With a derivative classifier, however, as long as you take that training once every 2 years, you're eligible to perform derivative classification. Now, there will be exceptions, and for example, a sickness or a deployment, but in cases like that, you can obtain a waiver from a senior agency official and then take that training as soon as possible. As we alluded to earlier, ISOO has just put out a great video on derivative classification training. We highly recommend it. But here you look at the different requirements, and Bob had touched upon these earlier as well. be identified by name and position or by personal identifier in a manner that is readily apparent for each derivative classification decision. This is very important with the name and position. Quite often I'll see documents that will list just the name but not the position. So in other words, you can't have classified by John Smith and Mary Jones. You also have to include the position as well. Personal identifier, quite often contractors have a number attached to that. The derivative classifier must also observe and respect original classification decisions, as well as carry forward to any newly created documents the pertinent classification markings. An example of that would be a multiple source document, which you're carrying over the listing of the source documents. You also have to focus on avoiding overclassification. This is an issue, as we touched upon earlier. I know everyone in this room has at one point or another seen a document that we thought was grossly overclassified. Information sharing. Our former director, Bill Leonard, was a very strong proponent of this. But as the slide states, improper or incorrect markings and overclassification impede effective information sharing. For the prohibitions and limitations, in no case shall information be classified, remain classified, or fail to be declassified in order to conceal violations of law, inefficiency, or administrative error, or to prevent embarrassment to a person, agency, or an organization, or to restrain competition, or prevent or delay the release of information that does not require protection in the interest of national security. The classification levels, we've touched upon that earlier, top secret, secret confidential. The duration of classification, the OCA can determine the duration up to a period of 25 years. After that, you need an exemption that's been approved by the ISCAP. Also, that the classification date has to be carried over to the derivatively classified product. If I'll just briefly touch upon that, for the classification date coming from a single source document or a classification guide, it's very simple. You just take the date that's on the front of the page. Now, with the multiple source document, it's a little bit more difficult, as we've been talking about that earlier, especially sometimes if you see 2 to 3 pages of multiple source documents. With multiple source documents, you have to go with the most restrictive date that is available. ISOO annual reports and ISOO program reviews provide details on the percentage of documents derivatively classified using multiple sources that we have examined that failed to provide the necessary multiple source documentation. And this was a source of significant concern in the past. We think that many agencies just did not understand the requirements of listing multiple sources. But hopefully with continued emphasis, this will change, and it is changing, as I can see on my reviews now. But another additional benefits of listing multiple sources, as we had been talking about earlier, is that it provides a valuable listing of source material. Like, for example, at Ditcher, I saw 2 to 3 pages of source material that would be just a valuable listing for researchers. But I didn't mean to spend so much time on the multiple sources, but since it's been such a problem in the past, I thought it was worth discussing briefly. Another thing about the duration of classification, it cannot be changed by the derivative classifier. Some of these were touched upon earlier, identification and markings, the identity of persons who apply derivative classification markings. They have to be identified by name and position of personal identifier. Portion markings, top secret, secret confidential, the overall classification on the top and bottom of the page, source of the derivative classification, the multiple source document, the classification guide or single source document, the declassification instructions, which are included in the classification authority block, and the date of origin of the document. If any of these items are missing, the document is not considered to have been marked correctly. Sanctions, this is another element that's frequently overlooked, but so as you can see here, employees are subject to sanctions if they knowingly, willfully, or negligently disclose to unauthorized persons information that's properly classified, or classify or continue the classification of information in violation of the order or its implementing directive, or create or continue a special access program contrary to the requirements of the order, or finally contravene any other provision of the order and the directive. Classification challenges. This kind of piggybacks on what we were talking about earlier with overclassification, because employees, as I alluded to earlier, are expected to challenge the classification of information that they feel is improperly classified. And this is one of the things that stands out the most when we go on these individual reviews, because many employees are not aware of that. But nonetheless, agencies are required to establish procedures in which employees can challenge the classification of information that they feel is improperly classified. And there can be non-retribution, too, for an individual that does so. Now, that does not necessarily mean that you're going to win the classification challenge. Not too long ago, I went on a review in which I saw a document that I was convinced was grossly overclassified, and I did my own classification challenge on the spot. And much to my very great surprise, I lost because I'm not the subject matter expert. But nonetheless, you are expected to challenge the classification of information that you feel is improperly classified. Now, security classification guides, there is no single document that has a more significant and long-lasting effect on the information security community as the classification guide. This single execution of authority by an OCA requires derivative classifiers who use it as a classification source to expend time and resources to protect the information derived from it at various levels. Therefore, it's imperative that security classification guides are created in accordance with the order and the directive, and that they are updated or canceled when the information in question no longer warrants protection at the classified level. To this end, Section 2.2 of the order was modified to ensure that OCAs are mindful of the impact their decision has on the information security community, and that their original classification determination is only in effect for as long as necessary to protect the national interest. But agencies with original classification authority shall prepare classification guides to facilitate the proper and uniform derivative classification of information. In addition, each guide has to be approved personally and in writing by an original classification authority who has supervisory responsibility over the information or as the senior agency official, and should also include contact information. One of the issues we run into on our reviews is quite often the security classification guides aren't updated, or they'll refer to the previous executive order, 12958, as amended. But just some final thoughts. Earlier I alluded to, I know that at times it must get very, very frustrating when you provide derivative classification and you see the same mistakes going on again and again, and at times you must wonder, what is the point? Well, I'd just like to share a tale of two different agencies that I've experienced recently. 10 years ago, ISOO went to a location, and when I looked at the document review, it was very, very poor. It was the worst I had ever seen up until that point. So I decided to look for the cause of that, so I decided to shadow a derivative classifier. And I noticed that he wasn't listing the multiple sources. And when I told him that it was a requirement in the order, he got very defensive, actually belligerent, and demanded to know where it was a requirement. And when I showed it to him in print, I'll never forget, he just matter-of-factly shrugged his shoulders and said, "It takes too much time, I'm still not going to do it." Now, our report to this particular location was quite blistering because of the poor document review, as you might expect. But in our report, we also provided several recommendations. Now, fast forward 10 years ago, we go back to the same location, and I'm expecting to see a dramatic turnaround. It's the same security program manager. We have provided several suggestions, so I'm expecting to see a dramatic turnaround. Well, much to my surprise, they actually scored worse. And I couldn't understand it because the security program manager understood the process. The people I interviewed understood the process. And the derivative classification training that I saw on a PowerPoint presentation was excellent. But the one lesson I took away from that is you could have the greatest PowerPoint presentation imaginable, but if it doesn't translate into results, you have to question the effectiveness of it. But then again, as I was trying to figure out why they scored so poorly, I thought of that man who 10 years ago who had defied me and matter-of-factly had said, "It takes too much time, I'm not going to do it." So in summary, at this particular location, that was established, they didn't care about the requirements for derivative classification because in their eyes it wasn't very important, and I have no doubt if I was to go back there 10 years from now, I'd still see the same results. Now, contrast that to an experience that I had even more recently. I went on a review to CNO. ISOO had gone there in 2014. I wasn't a part of that review, but I was leading the follow-up review. And CNO had scored very, very poorly in 2014. And when I found out I was going there, it was fresh off the debacle at the other agency where they actually scored worse. And I wasn't happy about it at all because I just expected to see the same thing. And I even forewarned the team members, expect to see a very poor showing. But much to my very, very great surprise, they did turn it around. They went from an error rate of about 90% to just under 34%. And those errors were very minor marking errors. So again, 55% is the difference. It was the biggest difference I've ever seen in my 14 years in ISOO. But so what accounts for the difference? Well, at CNO, the program manager, his name is Al Moore, he personally got involved in the process. He wanted to see the derivative classification products of the people that work there. And he also created a tool to help them better understand the process. More strikingly, he focused the security education program to focus on multiple sources. Where in 2014 they had over 50 documents that didn't list the multiple sources, now they had less than 5. So the results speak for themselves. So, and again, I give them a standing ovation for that, to do that type of a turnaround. But again, what accounts for that difference? At that other location, the reaction was, it's a requirement, but we don't care. We're still going to do whatever we wanted to do. At CNO, the attitude was, it's a requirement in the order, and I'm personally going to get involved in this. And one thing that I found very striking is at CNO, when I was doing the document review, Al Moore wanted to be in the same room with me. If there was a mistake with any document, he wanted to see it and clean it up right there on the spot, whereas at the other location, he didn't want to be anywhere near me when I was doing the document review for obvious reasons. But the moral of the story is you can and will continue to make a difference. Thank you. Yes? Well, they parlay upon one another, the overclassification. And
how would you, as a derivative classifier, when you take it from a source, say, oh, this is overclassification?
Well, in that case, you would contact the original classifier. When you see a document that you feel is improperly classified, that's when you're encouraged to contact the original classifier.
Correct. And so therefore, that's why I'm thinking it might be a bit of a challenge letting my folks know that, hey, you need to say, reduce it for overclassification. Don't overclassify something when they're going to come back and say, well, isn't that a challenge rather than overclassification? Because if you go, as you point out, if you go to the original classification authority and they say, oh, no, that's it, then would you not force to stay with what that is might be considered overclassification?
Well, for example, in the case that I was in, when I saw that document, I challenged the OCA right there on the spot. So that they did kind of merge one another in terms of a classification challenge and an overclassification. But the basis of this is if you see a document that is overclassified as you're looking at it, you are encouraged to contact the original classifying authority. And if you're still not satisfied with the answer, then you would formally classify the classification of the document. Okay. Well, just this thing about overclassification, like on our document reviews, as Bob showed the statistics, it wasn't the most common one that we see. But just as Peggy had been talking about earlier, what someone who is new at it, when they see an example that's absolutely glaring, that's basically what we're talking about. I'm sorry, sir?
So like one of the other things is certainly like guidance out there. So the thing that we encounter is like in some of our guides, like one criteria might be confidential, another criteria might be unclassified, other two, but when you put two unclassified with the confidential, it goes to secret.
It's compilation.
Mark is the DC, the derivative classifier, complied the guide correctly. It goes up to the management chain. You overclassified this. So there's nothing in like the transmittal document or something that says this is classified because of these specific combination of items.
Do you see documents like that? Okay.
Compilation can be quite complex. As most of you are probably aware of, we recently expanded the definition of classification by compilation. Right now, policy guidance states that it's when you take 2 or more pieces of unclassified information and it becomes classified. That would be classification by compilation. And this must be stated in the Security Classification Guide. We expanded it to include that elements of information that may be classified at a lower level may become classified at a higher level when combined. That's also a compilation issue. And again, these should be addressed specifically in the Security Classification Guide so that people are aware that when you're combining this information, you are creating a different classification level. So that's another reason why attention to the class guides is so important. You have to be aware of potential compilation issues.
We don't have a problem with the guide. The guides are pretty good. It's trying
A simple statement. This information, when combined with this information, becomes classified as this information, and cite your source.
That's kind of what we've been doing it, but we've never found anything in writing that's let us enforce that.
Okay. Anything else? Mark? Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. So before I let the CUI folks speak, what I am getting from the crowd is that the more specificity that ISOO can provide on these requirements, the better, right? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passed. All right. Yes, Bruce. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, that specified list of what you do in it is very helpful. We are looking at possibly developing some checklists that might help in that area. So, like we said earlier, any ideas that you've got, go ahead and send them to us, because we can create all the training in the world, but it's no good if it's not usable for you guys. So we are definitely open to suggestions. And with that, we are going to talk briefly about the controlled unclassified information training. And Mark, is Mark here? Mark's hiding from me. Mark Riddle is a senior program analyst, and we'll discuss that.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Riddle. Of course, I work in the CUI program office. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the training that we've developed to help agencies implement and raise awareness around the CUI program. Now, things move pretty fast in the CUI side of the house. Of course, this slide is even outdated. Currently, right now, we have 7 modules that are available from our website. So the website is correct. You can either type this in, or you can go to any search engine and type in CUI registry or CUI training, or just go to YouTube and type in controlled unclassified information. And what you're going to find, of course, are training modules that address a number of topics. The keys to safeguarding, of course, first would be, not in any particular order, but controlled environments, the idea of how to protect CUI in the physical and in the electronic realm, decontrol of CUI, which is what we call in the CUI world declassification. It's kind of like that same concept, but we have a module that addresses it. Also, the destruction of CUI, not just from paper-based destruction, but also the requirements and standards for the electronic destruction as well. The concept of lawful government purpose, there's also a module for that. This is what we call need to know. Again, we have about a 10-minute module that speaks to the ins and outs of lawful government purpose. Also, we get into markings, because of course, like in the classified world, markings are, in a lot of ways, considered to be the first safeguard. If we don't inform individuals of the sensitivity of information, how can we expect them to protect it? So we have 2 modules that are available. One is an introduction, and one of them also speaks to the options related to marking CUI. We also have a general CUI briefing that addresses the implementation and some of the safeguarding standards that's been out there for a while, and it's available for use. Of course, these 7 modules that we have available on our website right now are not our last attempt at training and awareness. They're just our first. So as agencies assert to us the need for particular focus on new topics, we will get back to the drawing board and start to refine and issue new training modules. Speaking of that, we also released a new module called CUI, the Unauthorized Disclosure, Prevention, and Reporting. This is in direct response to a memo that came out of the White House on September 8th that speaks to the need to reacquaint your employees with the standards for safeguarding classified information and also CUI. It's also available for download. Now, agencies are using these courses in a number of ways. A lot of times, agency personnel are providing links to their workforce for them to either view them directly from our site or from YouTube, or they will download the training modules and run them off of their learning platforms. So when you go to our site and you see, oh my gosh, you only have 4,000 hits on this particular training, that's not reflective of how it's actually being used. A number of agency program managers, that's what we call our security officers in the CUI world, have expressed that they are downloading these courses and they're making them required viewing for their workforce. So what we're getting within agencies is that they are using these courses and they're being viewed by 20 to 30,000 individuals. All this is being done just over the past couple of months because these modules are pretty much hot off the press, as you can imagine. Now, we have a couple of modules that we have in the works that we're going to be developing and releasing prior to the end of the year. One is going to be a new orientation video. Now, the orientation video will take you through, or take your users through, the basic handling and protections of CUI in one module. The 7 modules that I spoke to earlier are kind of a la carte, meaning that you can go there as an agency. If you want to emphasize or focus on the markings or controlled environments or destruction, those are the modules that you can download and use. But if some agencies, of course, have expressed that they need a module that will take somebody from the entire handling of this information, from its creation all the way through its handling to all the way to its destruction, all in one module. So overall, that course will be expected to be released sometime in December, early January. We expect it to run about 25 minutes. And it'll be the same thing that we've done with all of our courses. They'll be 508 compliant. They'll be posted onto YouTube. The PowerPoint slides and the talking points are always made available to agencies to use. Now, what we also have in the works, of course, are a number of training and awareness tools that you can use to reinforce some of these concepts related to handling and protection of CUI. Last December, we released a pretty in-depth marking handbook that covered all the marking requirements and also all the options that are available to users once they've implemented the CUI program. Since then, of course, we've released some more refined and focused modules or training and awareness tools that speak to the basics of marking, like in a trifold. Also, how to mark CUI in audio and video presentations. We also have a destruction module or a destruction certificate that can be placed on approved and evaluated equipment to inform users that equipment is authorized for the destruction of CUI. Actually, that's about all I got. I know I did that pretty fast. But really, go to the website. We're always changing things, and every agency within the executive branch has a designated program manager, and we have a lot of folks out there who are always farming ideas to us on what their program needs. And in this day and age with the CUI program, resources, are the issue when it comes to implementation. So if an agency doesn't have the resources to develop a particular training module or a resource, more often than times than not, we do. I do see I have a couple of questions, and I think, how much time do we got, Peg? A couple minutes? Okay. Yes, please?
This is a request for your training.
Okay.
Would you please, in all of your training, say this may not apply to all CUI in your agency? DOE has not implemented yet, but we are already using reference because people are saying these are the CUI requirements, CUI, so all these requirements apply, and it is completely and absolutely wrong, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
And they're saying, okay, no, but the CUI, so if it comes, if you just put a caveat in there that says, it doesn't not apply across the board.
Absolutely. So the comment was, of course, in future issuances of our training include a caveat that not all of this information will apply to your agency. And actually, when we address our program managers within agencies on how they're going to use these modules, we make it really clear to them that these modules are not the end of the story. They're tools that are going to help you raise awareness within your agency on how to handle and protect CUI. You can take what you need, but you don't need to take it all necessarily. But we always ask that agencies do that very thing, where they make it really clear on how they use it, especially on how they introduce these modules. So earlier when I said that agencies would take the hyperlinks that we send out to them and forward it out to the workforce, this usually comes in some sort of memorandum from the senior agency official or the CUI program manager that speaks to the specifics within that agency, specifically regarding implementation, and then of course provides an opener to the course. Because the way the course is structured, if somebody wants to know about lawful government purpose or controlled environments, it's a hard click and then you're right into the content. The only course right now that speaks to the implementation of the CUI program is this general briefing that we posted out there in January that speaks to the implementation and the features. The party line as far as implementation goes for agencies is that you have to wait. Just because the CUI implementing regulation is on the street doesn't mean that you need to go out there and start marking things as being CUI. Agencies have to wait until their parent agency implements the program and then gives them specific guidance on how that rollout will go within the components. I had a question over here.
How
So, yeah, so the question relates to have we given any guidance to how to share information that is CUI with non-federal entities? So this is actually a major part of the CUI program, and we are issuing guidance. First, the 32 CFR 2002 requires that agencies modify all contracts and agreements to align to the standards of the CUI program, and there's specific criteria that's laid out within the CFR for what those agreements should contain. Specifically, when agencies enter into these agreements, they need to identify the type of CUI that they're expecting this entity to handle and protect, and also any of the unique safeguarding requirements associated with the information. Now, for industry, a CUI office is working with a number of agencies on establishing a FAR, a Federal Acquisition Regulation, to standardize the way that the executive branch conveys that safeguarding guidance to industry. In the interim, because it takes a while to put out a FAR, we can expect it in about a year, in the interim, ISOO is issuing a notice to agencies to give them additional guidance on what the content of those agreements should be. Those requirements are reflective of what we're putting inside of the Federal Acquisition Regulation. So right now, of course, I run an interagency working group where we're tossing around the CUI notice. It's actually CUI Notice 2017-03. That's the number designation when it hits the streets. But agencies are bouncing it around, commenting on it, and hopefully we're going to have a final product sometime in the middle of November, early December.
So we could expect training in 2019.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So we could expect the training to be out in 2019.
For training? Oh, no. So the training that I spoke to earlier is actually out on our web right now. It's up to the agencies on when to start using it for their workforce.
I'm talking with regards to the FAR and
Oh, yeah. So you could expect training related to the Federal Acquisition Regulation to be out sometime in 2014. So inside of the room, I want to, oh, 2019, yeah, right on. So I want to draw your attention to a couple of the notices that ISOO has issued to help agencies implement the program. So I realize that a lot of you in the room are working with classified information, and CUI may not be your thing, or maybe it is some of y'all's thing. But if you are curious about the guidance that we've given to agencies on what it takes to implement the program, you go to our website, you go to Policy and Guidance, and you'll see a series of issuances that we sent out to agencies that speak to, of course, phased implementation of the program and also recommendations related to implementation. Specifically, I want to draw everybody's attention to CUI Notice 2017-01. The title of this notice is Implementation Recommendations for the CUI Program. And one of the things that we cover, since this day is all about training, one of the things we cover in this notice is the training that you have to deliver to your workforce to speak to the CUI program. So I don't want to get too much into it, but we do envision 4 types of training for your workforce. There's that initial orientation training once your agency has implemented that policy. There's specified training that speaks to the unique information types that your agency handles and works with. There's a refresher training requirement. And there's also something that we call it awareness or awareness training, kind of setting the expectation of what's to come. The CUI program is based off of a CFR, which became effective in November of 2016, and it gives agencies a number of years to fully implement the CUI program. But what it means is that because we're in an era of resources, some agencies are very likely to implement the CUI program faster than others. So we have to train the workforce on the real possibility that legacy markings and practices for sensitive information will exist at the same time as CUI practices. Actually, a number of you in the room have probably already seen guidance from OMB and other agencies that is already marked as being CUI. It is very appropriate for them to do this at this stage in the game. So in the next 3 to 5 years, we do expect the CUI program to be fully implemented, and terms like FOUO, SBU, some forms of SSI will just be something that we talk about in history books. Any other questions? All right. Well, that's all I have. I'm going to turn it back over to Peggy.
All right, now, questions and answers. We have a few minutes. If anyone has any questions, we will do our best to answer, and you can use a microphone on either side of the stage. Or have we answered them all already? Yeah, please.
Hello, I actually work in the training department, and I partner with my security guys here to develop and distribute the training to our workforce. And I want to really thank the CUI guys for making their training available so we can load it on our learning management system. As Bob mentioned, we can't track most of the training that they take because we don't deploy it through our learning management system. And, you know, they send emails, certificates of, you know, of other courses and things like that. And we just have a real hard time. And is there any plan for you to take, like those that great YouTube derivative classification training and make it available either as a SCORM package or just be able to download the video so then we can package it and put it on our learning management system so we can actually track this training better for our employees?
That is an excellent question. And thanks to Health and Human Services, where are you guys? I know you're hiding in the back earlier. Just last week, they asked me how they could get a copy of that video because they can't take it from YouTube and incorporate it into their training. So our fantastic video staff here at the archives was able to give me a standalone version of that video. However, it's 1.5 gig, and so I can't just email it to anybody. However, working with HHS, they were able to use software called KiteWorks, and we were able to upload the video for them to ingest into their training program. So we can do that. If you've got a way of getting this file uploaded and into your system, we definitely have it as a standalone video at this point. Any other questions? No? Okay, again, I encourage you, please email us at isotraining@nara.gov. We've got our webpage, we've got YouTube videos, so please let us know what you need, and we will do our best to work with all of you to make sure we come up with some really good training products. Thank you very much for attending.